Hi, it's Miss Parrott, and welcome back to the AP Bio Equations Explained series. Today we're going to be looking at the laws of probability in genetics. In genetics, we use math to predict the likelihood of traits in offspring given certain parents. And we do this using two mathematical rules, the addition rule, which we'll look at next, and the multiplication rule. If you want to, you can jump ahead. There are slides on these and on combining. We're going to combine the two rules, and then later we're going to do some practice problems. So jump to wherever in the video is most helpful for you. Who do we have to thank for all of this knowledge? Well, Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel was a monk and a scientist who studied inheritance in pea plants. And from that, he made some big conclusions. One was that certain traits appeared in consistent ratios, and that parents contribute alleles or versions of genes to their offspring both randomly, that's the law of segregation, and independently, that's the law of independent assortment. For more information on Mendel's contributions to genetics, click the video above. All right, let's look at the addition rule. The addition rule says if A and B, those are two possible events. If these events are mutually exclusive, meaning one happening prevents the other from happening, then we're going to use the addition rule. The addition rule formula is P of A or B. P is the probability, so the probability that event A or event B will happen equals probability of A plus the probability of B happening. So this formula and the multiplication rule can be found on the formula sheet and are available for you to use on the AP Bio exam. But we want to practice with them and understand what they mean so we know which one to use and how to use it. All right, so let's say we have two parents who are heterozygous for a certain gene. We'll call it G. The question may ask, what's the probability of getting a heterozygous offspring? Well, you could do a Punnett square. I have a video on how to do Punnett squares. Actually, I have a whole genetics playlist. You can check that out too. Or you could think, all right, what are the two ways that I could possibly get a heterozygous? I could either get a heterozygous by getting a dominant allele from mom and a recessive allele from dad. That's 1 out of 4 chance of that happening, right? Or I could get a dominant allele from dad and a recessive allele from mom. That's another 1 out of 4 chance. And if this happens, none of these happen. So, and if this happens, the mom contributes the dominant and the dad, if these two alleles come together, none of the other ones do. So these are mutually exclusive. So what we're going to do is we're going to add those probabilities. So there's a 1/4 chance that this will happen plus a 1/4 chance that this will happen equals 2/4. So according to the addition rule, there's a 2 out of 4 or 1/2 chance, or we could say a 50% chance. All of those are perfectly fine, accurate, and will earn you the same number of points on the AP exam, unless it asks you to reply in a certain way, percent or fraction or whatever. So these are all perfectly good answers to this that you find using the addition rule. Now let's look at the multiplication rule. The multiplication rule we're going to use when we have and questions. So we're going to use this when the outcome of one event happening does not affect or is independent of the other. So for instance, we could have, what is the probability given two heterozygous parents of getting little g offspring? So again, you could do a Punnett square, or you could say, well, the probability of getting a little g from the mom is 1/2. 1 out of 2 chance, right? There's 2 alleles, you get a 1 out of 2 chance from mom. And of getting a little g, from dad is also 1/2. And 1/2 times 1/2 is a 1/4 chance of getting a homozygous recessive offspring. Of course, you could also fill in a Punnett square, and on a small one like this, that's not a big deal. But when it really, really matters and comes in the most handy is during dihybrid crosses. Let's look at that next. So, dihybrid crosses are when you have two parents, and you're looking at 2 traits. So now we have 4 alleles per parent, all kinds of different combinations of these alleles, and you can make a 4x4, 16 square Punnett square. And that takes forever. So we're going to use the laws of probability to keep us from having to draw and fill in this. So the official rules for dihybrid cross is that you are having 2 parents who are heterozygous for both traits. Now, you can do other crosses that involve 2 genes that aren't necessarily dihybrid, but in these we're going to be looking at ones where parents are heterozygous for 2 traits. All right, so let's say the question says, find the probability of an offspring being heterozygous for both traits, having the same genotype as the parents. Now, you can memorize the phenotypic ratios of a dihybrid cross. That's 9:3 to 3:1. If you want to check out my dihybrid cross video, you can. But it is way harder to memorize the genotypic outcomes of a dihybrid cross. So let's use the law of probability. Step 1, use the addition rule to find the probability of being heterozygous for the R gene or for the G gene. So here I went ahead and set up those Punnett squares. So we have a 1/4 plus 1/4, just like our previous thing. That's 1/2 here. And then in G, we have 1/4 plus 1/4 is 1/2, or 2/4, right? So those are our probabilities of each individual event happening, or each gene combination occurring. Then step 2, use the multiplication rule. So the probability that you're going to get to be heterozygous for both traits will be the probability of heterozygous for R, which we just determined was 1/2, times the probability of being heterozygous for big G, little g, for G, and that was also 1/2. So then we're going to multiply these by multiplying across the numerator and then multiplying across the denominator. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 is 4. So we have a 1/4 or 25% chance of an offspring having the genotype heterozygous for both traits. Remember, this only works if the genes assort independently. It doesn't work if the genes are linked on the same chromosome. So let's do some practice problems. We're using the same concept as before. So in a dihybrid cross, right, so both parents, both heterozygous for both traits, what's the probability of having an offspring with homozygous recessive for both traits? Well, in this case, we don't really have to use the addition rule because only 1 out of 4 chance of being recessive. And then 1 times 1 is 1, 4 times 4 is 16. So you have a 1 in 16 chance of being this. Again, that's a lot less time than drawing the giant 16 cross, or dihybrid cross, Punnett square, filling everything in and then counting. Okay, now we could use these same ones. We could figure out what's the chance of being heterozygous for R and homozygous recessive for G. So this would be 2/4 and then G, little g, times 1/4. So you would have a 2 out of 16 chance of being heterozygous for the R trait and homozygous recessive for the G trait. All right, what about big R, big G, little g? So homozygous dominant for the first, we have a 1 in 4 chance here. And then heterozygous for G, we have a 2 out of 4 chance in that. And again, multiply across the top. 1 times 2 is 2, and 4 times 4 is 16. So you have a 2 out of 16 chance of having this genotype. You could do that for any combination of genotypes, which is pretty exciting and saves a lot of time, which is limited on the AP exam. To wrap up, the addition rule we use when it's an either or situation. And this is the formula. We're going to add using when there's an or question. In multiplication rule, this is what we use when there's an and question. And we're going to multiply the likelihood of A happening with the likelihood of B happening. Probability is the language of inheritance. If you like this video, please remember to give it a like, subscribe, leave a comment, a question, or an emoji. And if you're a teacher, check out my TPT store for resources at Know and Grow with Knowns. Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you next time.